when Jordan Love is okay on that camera, not so much.
That was some crap right there. I gotta say, I was watching that when that happened. That was not nice by Ashley Washburn of TMJ4 at all. Like, it wasn't nice. I follow her on Twitter at Ashley J. Washburn. She joins us on the Fan Guest Hotline, powered by Gerber Law. You can check her out on YouTube as well, as we are streaming all of our shows locally here on YouTube. Search The Fan Milwaukee on YouTube, video shorts. And again, check us out there. That wasn't nice to y'all. Like, you weren't nice about it. John Kuhn wasn't nice about it. Harlan wasn't nice about it. None of y'all. Without that cameraman, that interview's not even happening. Like, that is your lifeline to do your job. Like, everybody should have been over there. Dude, are you all right? Are you all right? Like, but no, it's all about the quarterback making $55 million a year. He'll be fine. The camera guy ain't making $55 million a year. That dude gets laid up with a broken leg or something. He's screwed. I felt bad for the camera guy, Ashley.
That's Trace Browning. He's an incredible freelancer, does a lot of stuff with the Brewers as well. My mic was turned off pretty quickly after that. I can say that I was there checking on him. We had to go and get tape and fix the camera. But Trace Browning, incredible cameraman. He was okay.
Good.
He said there was a lot of people that had messaged him immediately when that happened, obviously checking to make sure he was okay. One of those interesting things about those sideline interviews, because Packers are always careful about how we do them, because that's the reality of a situation when you do an in-game interview, is the possibility of a player like Kamal Haddon running off the sideline. We purposely position ourselves so the player can always see what's happening on the field, which is why you could tell that Jordan Love could see when somebody was running on the sideline. Sure. I was so focused on Jordan, I didn't see him. And obviously my cameraman is the one who's put in a position to possibly get hurt, which is kind of what happened, because he didn't know to move other than it getting really rough.
Oh, I figured it out. So this is all Jordan Love's fault. Jordan Love almost got your cameraman killed because he didn't say nothing.
I wouldn't say it was Jordan Love's fault, but I'm glad it was just more materialistic stuff, and we were able to finish the interview, and Trace Browning was okay. If anything, it just made for some very interesting TV after that.
Yeah, no question about that. Ashley Washburn, TMJ4, joins us. Follow on Twitter at Ashley J. Washburn, and she joins us here on the Mason Crosby Show, presented by Verizon. Sparky filling in for Mason and Thunder today. Tommy Wirtz, other side of the glass, producing today's show. So obviously you've been there through all of training camp. You get to do sideline reporting for the PackersTV network, which is a pretty cool gig too. What are your thoughts as you've been able to interact with Jordan Love and that type of deal throughout the last few months, as far as Jordan Love, the dude?
I mean, I think the biggest takeaway from Jordan Love, the dude, is just how composed he is. He is one of, I would say, a quiet leader. He's not one of those extremely loud people that you're seeing on a field, but there's just so many people that attract to him because of his leadership style. And I think as he's getting ready to go into year 3 as the starter here, I'm not going to say he feels the weight on his shoulders by any means, but it's just been really great getting more to know him throughout this process, because obviously we knew him as the draft pick, the backup, and then now ultimately the starter. And I think he's stepped into the role really well, but there's obviously a lot of eyes going into this year. The thumb injury was kind of an issue this training camp, but also one of those situations he was really open on is, I'd rather get this all figured out now, because he had dealt with injuries for most of last season. So he's rather feeling like he could go into this season at 100%, getting that addressed now.
The other part about this, talking about the Green Bay Packers and that quarterback situation, is not only does he have the banged up thumb that he had the ligament damage on, so, they're kind of playing some fake 7-on-7s and so forth. Yeah. I mean, receivers, he's got 3 receivers that are out at this point. So the first time these guys get on the field, if they all get on the field in week 1, is going to be against they're definitely the best team in the North for the last couple of years, the Detroit Lions. Not exactly ideal for the Packers, and it could be a bumpy start as these guys try to get used to playing with each other again after not having played together for the last month.
I think for me yesterday too, it really came into a full vantage moment when I was actually looking at the schedule, planning my next month, and was like, well, yeah, we've obviously got the Lions in week 1, but then they've got that quick turnaround in Thursday Night Football just a few days later. And so, yeah, the chemistry is one thing, but then to not even be able to probably go through whatever happens on that game film after week 1, and you're immediately playing another great opponent like the Commanders. But That was a question I asked Jordan Love on the sideline on Saturday, was how difficult is it building chemistry with a group when you haven't even had the group fully out there this training camp? And it's unfortunately a situation that stretches even farther than the receiving corps, because you take a look at that offensive line and Aaron Banks has been so banged up. Rasheed Walker saw, I think, just a little bit of playing time this past week. I'm interested to see, obviously, what happens at that left tackle spot, because I think Jordan Morgan has really established himself there this training camp. But there is a lot to be said about going into a week 1 game against the Lions. You know that this is going to be another division, the NFC North, that it's like this is the division to beat. And you don't want another situation again of where they're 1-5. And so it's like you really got to establish yourself with a big win against the Lions in week 1. But I'll be interested to see what happens, of course, when maybe this next week is really going to be the only time Jordan Love is finally getting able to go into that 11-on-11 stuff. I'd asked him last week when we had pool media availability with him if there was any timeline for that, because of course you want to get some sort of interaction or being able to have, pass rushers come at you and stuff, but that's something that they're kind of keeping at arm's distance at the moment because they don't want anything flying towards that injured thumb. Right. So that's also another question, is that the first 11-11 action is you're going to see is week 1 against the Lions too. So he wasn't shying away from the fact that it's definitely been a bit difficult to build chemistry amongst this offense. But on the flip side, and Adam Senovich said the same thing in a production meeting, is how great has it been able to see a guy like Matthew Golden get the reps and build that chemistry with Jordan Love, because otherwise he would have been quote unquote lower on the depth chart where he wouldn't have gotten as many valuable reps as we've seen in training camp.
And let the record show, Tommy Wirtz, that I just now met Ashley Washburn, so I'm not going to yell at Ashley Washburn during this interview.
That's good.
I'm not going to go down the Jordan Morgan, Rasheed Walker lane like I yell at everybody else about on this show, so I'm just going to leave it alone. We're going to move on.
Sparky hates Jordan Morgan.
I don't hate – well, that's a whole nother conversation about my thoughts on this unfair competition that just occurred in Green Bay. But we'll move forward. Ashley Washburn, TMJ4, joins us. Follow her on Twitter at Ashley J. Washburn. The wide receiver cuts obviously coming out today, right? So Isaiah Neyer is gone. Cornelius Johnson is gone at this point. Kawan Baker was already gone, I think, last night. So they've made some cuts already, the wide receiver core. Your thoughts, does McCole Hardman and Malik Heath, one or the other or both, make this team, knowing that at least Christian Watson is out for sure, and we may be without the other two, and Wicks and Reed possibly too?
Yeah, that is a question I was trying to prepare myself to answer hopping on here, because I knew that was going to be an argument, is what is that going to look like come cut day in that wide receiver room? Because I think you look at Malik Heath, he had a great training camp. He's a guy that you can put out there in certain situations. McCole Hardman, we saw a few mistakes. I wouldn't say he was as productive on offense in that wide receiver room as we'd wanted to see, but if he was kept, it was because of being in a returner role. So that's kind of where I'm leaning one way or the other, is, are they wanting him to come as a returner, or you've got a guy like Malik Heath who you possibly could get a little bit more production out of in terms of a wide receiver point. With how banged up that wide receiver room is right now, I think I would lean towards Malik Heath. I'll be interested to obviously see how that pans out by the end of the day. But that's, I think, the way that I would go between those two possible choices in that receiver room. Maybe there's a situation you can keep both of them just because of how banged up that room is. But again, if it was really between one and the other, I think I'd go Malik Heath in that situation just because of the state of that room.
I'd cut both of them and go with two young guys. That's where I'm at on both of those guys. Football Talk on the Fan is presented by Paramount Plus. You can't count on much these days, but you can always count on Sundays with the NFL and CBS and Paramount Plus. Watch your local NFL game live every Sunday. CBS and Paramount Plus all season long. Visit ParamountPlus.com/NFL to get started today. When we talk about the other side of the ball, the linebacker room, Isaiah Simmons was a guy that came in, and Isaiah Simmons was a guy that everybody was excited about coming into training camp. Oh my gosh, he's so athletic, and him and Quay Walker and Edgerrin Cooper, it's going to be amazing. I was one of those fools. And then, he plays a couple of games and you start looking at the film and you're like, okay, he doesn't know what he's doing. He's kind of all over the place in this one. And then there's a report out today from Matt Zenitz that Isaiah Simmons is expected to be released at this point. How surprised are you by that?
See, that was one of those situations when I started seeing that first and second preseason unfold, I wasn't necessarily surprised that that might have been the case. Like you had mentioned, yeah, I think there was a lot of people that were really high on Isaiah Simmons just because of, the draft value that was in him a few years ago. There was a lot of Packer people that were high on him, being able to get him into a defense where they were only going to really give him like one role, one thing to focus on, because this was a guy that they really had pulled him in many different ways between his other two teams. And there were flashes that we saw in training camp of, okay, maybe this is what the Packers were talking about. This is what the Packers saw, bringing him in during free agency, but getting him in an actual game situation, you weren't necessarily seeing that translate, which at the end of the day, that's what this is all about, right? Is being able to put a guy out on the field in these game-like situations who can come in and make plays. Now, I will say when it came to this last game against the Seahawks, I thought he put together his best game out of the three. And it was one of those situations where I think a lot of those bubble players is you either come into this game and lay everything out on the field, or you write your fate for yourself in terms of, all right, you made this decision easy for the Packers front office. You're not going to be a part of the 53. So for him to come in and play what he did, I believe in the time that he was in there, he did lead the team in tackles. It's something to think of. That would be the only thing where, even though the projection that you were just saying is him being cut, when you're really looking between Christian Welch and Isaiah Simmons, is do the Packers still see as much value in him when they brought him in during free agency? But obviously you have a guy like Christian Welch who they brought back this offseason because of what he can bring on special teams. He's a special teams ace. So that's another position that's been a toss-up. So in a sense, if Isaiah Simmons is cut today, I'm not surprised, because he did only really put together one game where you know what you have in Christian Welch at this point.
Well, the other thing is, at the end of the day, these last few roster spots are going to be Rich Bisaccia spots of who he wants. That's how the bottom of this roster is going to be filled out. I mean, you're paying the guy $1 million a year, whatever the case may be. He's going to get some say in who he wants on his team. And I think there was a regret last year when they decided to move on from Christian Welch, as Tommy Wirtz was pointing out earlier in the show, and they may not want to have that same regret 2 years in a row.
Well, and that's obviously a conversation going into that today, is knowing that when you cut these guys, they're up there for other teams to grab. Yep. And you hope that they come back maybe in a special team standpoint. But yeah, like you said, if you cut Christian Welch, there's somebody else that's watching this and saying, yeah, that's a guy that we want to bring here and be a part of our special teams unit. So that's, I think, when you go back and forth of, do you keep tapping into Isaiah Simmons and maybe the ceiling that you potentially see in him, or do you have somebody solid in Christian Welch who will provide on special teams?
What about that backup quarterback spot? There's a report out. This one, let's see, is Taylor Elgersma, Tom Silverstein, in the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. And I'll roll with him every day of the week on his report. So Taylor Elgersma out. Now we'll see what happens with Clifford, whether or not he's out as well, and then they try to get through one or both of those guys to the practice squad, or do they keep 3 on the active roster? I think it was 13 teams last year kept 3 on their roster for week 1 of the NFL season. Who outplayed who in your mind between Clifford and Elgersma?
That's a great question, because I also have been looking at it from 2 lenses, as I know other people have, because Sean Clifford being with the Packers now for a few years, you wonder, have we met the ceiling with him, where you look at Taylor and him coming from Canadian football, transitioning to American football. I want to say Adam Stenavich, there's things that like he wanted Taylor to kind of learn more how to like know when to throw away plays or get the ball out quicker, different things like that. But what we saw against the Seahawks, even against the Colts, is like there's flashes of him where he's got some zing to that ball. And there are good decision-making that he can do. So it's like, okay, do you go with the guy who's a veteran who maybe is at his ceiling, or do you go with a guy like Taylor who has potential that you could build into a backup quarterback position? And so I guess the question is like you mentioned, so if you cut both quarterbacks or if you decide to keep 3 on an active roster, I truthfully don't think the Packers will keep 3 on the active roster. I think those are spots that they are, like you said, Rich is going to be trying to fill out his special teams unit, or some of those other bubble players where if you decide to keep 7 receivers or different things like that. I only see it being 2 receivers. Now, if you could bring one of those guys back on the practice squad, now that's where I think the real debate is, if they clear waivers, is do you find a project in Taylor, or do you just stay with a guy like Clifford knowing that he's probably met his ceiling? If it was me, I was impressed by Taylor for him not having much experience with American football. But again, knowing that if there was ever a situation where Jordan Love got hurt, which you hope that's not the case, that still is going to be your backup quarterback. So how do you feel with him backing up Malik Willis if it ever came down to that position? But I think between the two, I would go with Taylor just because what he has brought to the table in his very short time of playing American football, because Canadian football and American football are very completely different things.
Right.
I was impressed with what he was able to do in that short time, which I think is why the Packers decided to keep him. They were open about during minicamp when they brought him in. It was just to have another guy who could throw the ball around. But then they were actually impressed. They're like, you know what, let's keep you during training camp and maybe get a little competition going between you and Sean Clifford.
I like Elgersma too. I would keep him over Clifford. Now, in fairness, I didn't like Clifford coming out of the draft either, and didn't like that pick when they made it. So I've kind of have been anti-Clifford from the start since he's been on this roster. But I do like Elgersma. I agree with your assessment as far as how they should look at it if they're debating on who the practice squad player is coming back. Ashley Washburn, TMJ4 sideline reporter for the Packers TV network during the preseason. Follow her on Twitter at Ashley J. Washburn. Ashley, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me, guys.
You betcha. Take care. There she is, Ashley Washburn, here on the Fan Guest Hotline, powered by Gruber Law. One call, that's all. Do you think she'll ever come back on with any show I ever do?
No, I totally didn't know. It was bad producing by me this morning. I would have never asked her to come on if it was just you.
See? At least he's honest.
Yeah, no, 100%.
At least
100%.
He is honest.
Yeah.
So you duped her into thinking it was Crosby and then set her up, and she came out and said, who in the world is this that I got to deal with?
I was kind of hoping she was like, damn, Mason Crosby, they said his hair went really gray over this time, and maybe mistake you.
Let the record show that Crosby had gray hair before I did, if we're being honest, back in his kicker days. It wasn't like he just went gray. That dude's been gray for a minute now.
Yeah. She did just text me, ha, thank you guys for having me on. So maybe it was all good. Didn't matter.
Ashley, I hope
but
I didn't yell at her.
No, I was getting nervous once Jordan Morgan got brought up. I was getting nervous.
You know, some other people I would yell at. Ryan Wood, I would yell at in a heartbeat for the entire interview, right?
I mean,
I would yell at Tom Silverstein, Pete Doherty, all those guys. I'd yell at all of them. But I don't know, Ashley. This was the first time we've ever talked. I don't want to get the wrong impression, because when I yell at you, doesn't mean that I'm mad at you. It just means that I get loud and emotional.
You are a very loud and emotional guy, and I think that's why we get along so well, is because we're both very loud, emotional guys. And
Charlie is not. He balances us out.
Charlie is not. And both Mason and Mitch, I think, are more quiet, emotional guys.
Nellis is definitely emotional.
He's just emotional.
But he's not as loud necessarily. Unless you put him in a public place where all eyes can be on him. Then he gets loud.
Crosby has emotions that you got to unlock with NIL discussions and Hall of Fame ceremonies. Like, those are the only way you get emotion out of Mason Crosby.
Okay, coming up next, we'll keep you updated on the list. Tommy is doing a great job scouring social media, putting together this Packer cut list with all the different people that are reporting it. I'm telling y'all, like, Easton Butler is really good. If you don't follow him, because when it comes to cuts, the dude is locked in on cuts every year. This has been going on for like 3-4 years now. I feel like he's all over it. Ryan Wood, Tom Silverstein, Matt Zenitz has the Isaiah Simmons one. So we'll go over that entire list coming up next. And we're going to talk about a story that kind of came out yesterday about Romeo Doubs possibly being traded at one point this offseason. We'll discuss that coming up next. Mason Crosby Show, presented by Verizon, the official 5G network of the Green Bay Packers. Live from the 1250 AM and 105.7 FM The Fan Studios, powered by the Potawatomi Sportsbook. Sparky in place of Mason and Thunder.